The 365 Pro Wrestling.
365 Nation, I'm your host, Eddie Osborne, and today my guest is none other than the walking weapon, Josh Alexander. Josh, thank you for joining us today.
Thanks for having me, man.
Now, you've been tearing it up like crazy as of late, but let's go back to the beginning for a minute. Were you always a fan of pro wrestling?
No. Like, as a child, I had the LJN figures, and that was about it. I lived in the country, so we didn't really have TV. So I only watched what my parents would watch, which was NASCAR and terrible TV shows.
I was going to say, did you guys get the like Saturday nights once in a while, or Saturday afternoons once in a while? That's all I ever saw growing up.
No, my first memory of wrestling was, I think it was WrestleMania 4. So I was like probably 4 years old, just almost 4. And my grandmother was a huge fan of Miss Elizabeth and Randy Savage, so she had ordered that on satellite dish. Yeah, but other than that, no, I never. My parents didn't like wrestling. They didn't like me watching it. Yada yada. It would take up TV time with something they didn't want to watch, so I wasn't allowed to watch it.
What got you involved in it then?
I discovered Stone Cold Steve Austin through a magazine. I picked up a magazine with him and Shawn Michaels on the cover, leading up to WrestleMania 14 with Mike Tyson in the back.
Wow. And then after that, were you just hooked, or you wanted to check it out?
Yeah, I was hooked. I was obsessed. Through it, I found WCW on Saturday night on my satellite dish. You know, I could sneak watching TV when I was 12 years old. That was easier than when I was 4. And I found Sting and the NWO and the Cruiserweights, and I became obsessed. And then I fell kind of out of it in high school, you know, sports, girls, whatever. And I discovered TNA on Wednesday nights, and I watched with my buddy, and through that I found Ring of Honor, which introduced me to like this insane type of wrestling that I never knew could exist, with like guys like AJ Styles and Loki and Christopher Daniels and Samoa Joe. So like that's what really sparked it, because once I found TNA and Ring of Honor was like the big catalyst for me to be like, this is an insane type of wrestling that I just don't want to stop watching.
I think Ring of Honor is underrated for that, because it inspired a real generation of wrestlers, I think. Because we had the Fed, we had WCW, TNA, but like Ring of Honor was so different, and it was like showing the indies almost like a super indie, but like an indie. What made you think, like, I want to do this? Yeah,
there was actually a Discovery Channel Canada ran a thing on, I think it was Squared Circle Training at the time still. And I'd watched it when I was in grade 11, and through that, the internet was still in its infancy, but I Googled something in 2002, and I found Hart Brothers Von Erich Wrestling School in Cambridge and a few other schools, and immediately I just wanted to do it all. So I was trying to convince my mom, and I remember, well, you're from this school, correct?
Yeah, I am.
And he called me, and it's funny because I've heard people on podcasts give the exact same story, like famous people, that, you know, he calls you and he's like, oh, I've got one more spot open, but it's going to fill fast. It's going to be $3,000. I need the down payment now, and I got a bed waiting for you. Yada, yada. And like, I was all in. My mom was just like, this guy sounds like a complete crook. This is not fucking happening. And I'm like, I was devastated, obviously. But then years later, once I found a wrestling school and like actually been to that facility, I realized that my mom had saved me a lot of hardship.
And I feel like I was lucky. Elian went first, and he got that exact same speech, and he went, and he had to deal with all the stuff. But when I went, we trained 5 nights a week, and Jimmy and Rory were there, Sid and Juan, so I actually felt like got something out of it, but then it went to crap right away after they left again. So
yeah, but then
I felt like
right?
Yeah.
You training there you got people like Addie and, you know, Eric and other people, and like from what I heard, like they had to bust their asses, but they earned it, right?
For sure, and that's how I was taught. And who did you train with in the beginning?
I trained at Ricky Stardust and Ernie Moore's LLWA for about a year, and like honestly, it was kind of like learn as you go, do whatever you want. It was just an open facility with a ring. It was a chance to get in a ring, so I'd watch tapes and see stuff I wanted to try and go in, and like me and Rip were there every single day for a year. Like, wow. They gave me a key after 2 months, because like I was always the first person in the parking lot waiting, and if somebody called in sick and wouldn't open the doors, you know, they knew I was there, so they gave me a key. But I wanted to get trained properly, because I realized once I started working shows that unless you were trained by somebody reputable or at a school that was reputable in those times, like nobody would give you a look. So I went to Johnny Devine's school. He opened it up strictly because he was pissed off with the level of training that was around at that time. And, he kicked my ass for 6 months to a year. And I came out a better wrestler for it. I think he's one of the best teachers I've ever seen in wrestling. So, it was invaluable, but I went there and, busted my ass. I went to Squared Circle for a few months too. Like I don't think it's like a thing to train at just one school. So like I tried a little bit of everything just to, get out, but Johnny Devine trained me.
I just saw Johnny about 2 months ago, and the guy still looks in amazing shape, still smiling. And I remember when you went there, and I do believe like right after that, I think that's what switched. Like you were like Jay Phoenix and you're a young guy, and then like when you came over there, it was almost like you're more of a man, and you were just a hard-nosed wrestler in a way. To me, I'm not sure if you feel the same, but just from the outside looking in.
Yeah, like I've talked to him about it since, like, and it's kind of weird, but like I didn't grow up with like a dad in my life. My dad wasn't around, and my stepdad didn't want to be my dad because he already had 2 sons before that, and he didn't want to like take the opportunity away from my actual father. It was kind of weird. So like I never had a male role model in my life until I met Divine, and like I can say like he's pretty much a heat magnet. He knows that in wrestling because he's so stuck in his ways and he's a stubborn guy. But like he was like a father figure to me. Like he taught me how to become a man. He taught me how to carry myself in the wrestling business, not even just the wrestling ring. And like it was honestly invaluable to me, and it was a lesson like I still use lessons he taught me back then today.
And with all that, like, what advice do you have to people who want to get into pro wrestling and are looking for a school?
Tough, because like you can go to the spot with the most reputable trainer there is. Like you can use Santino's school as an example. Santino has made more money in wrestling than anybody in Canada, probably. School open, and it's a great facility, and what he does is great. I've wrestled a lot of his students, and I have nothing I can say bad about them. But I think Super Kicks, for instance, a school in Toronto run by a guy who never did anything more than just indie wrestling locally and a little bit, not locally. He has produced some of the best students I've seen come out as the most successful students on an indie basis. So it depends what your goals are. If you want to be in the WWE and you just want to like go straight to developmental and you don't want to do this whole independent wrestling process, then maybe Santino School is for you. But like me, I have always valued being a respected independent professional wrestler. Like I wanted to be the AJ Styles, the Chris Hero, and the Loki that I watched when I was like 16 years old. I wanted to be those guys that were respected on the indies on a worldwide scale before they ever went on television. So like that was my goal. If you have a goal that's different, you have to adjust where you want to train.
For sure. And I always hear like either go to rep rule school or like someone but I know a lot of people who didn't go to schools and it was bad you want it, and then networking after that as well. But
if you're going to be good at this, you're going to be good regardless of where you go. Like I just think that it's your passion. It's the level of how much you actually want to do it and the work you put into it.
For sure. And in the beginning, you were always out. You came to our weekly shows every single damn week. You were on LLWA and all these, or LLW. I'm not sure which one it was at that time, but you were at every show. And I'm pretty sure, like, I was on a lot of shows back then, but you were even at more shows. Like, was it just trying to get to as much as you can to learn? Because we used to get in the ring before shows back in the day. It doesn't seem like they do that anymore around here. I'm not sure if they do it in the States much, but what was that just want to get more ring time?
Yeah, I like, honestly, if I wasn't at a wrestling show, I just didn't feel like I was doing anything I wanted to do. Like that was the only, once I discovered it, once I did it, that's the only place I ever felt comfortable. The only thing that made me like feel fulfilled in any way. Even if I didn't get booked on the show, just setting up the ring and watching the show, like to this day, I've been wrestling 14 and a half years. I'm one of the only guys on these local indie shows that will actually watch the show. It blows my mind. And like, I'm not the guy that's going to walk around and be like, hey, how long have you been wrestling? Oh, 4 years. Why aren't you watching the show? But like, it is something that pops out in my head. Like, I don't know how, like, I love watching the show. Why aren't people watching this stuff? Like, but yeah, like, I credit you on every podcast I do. And in my wrestling school, when I talk to my students all the time, like, my first year in wrestling, I had 104 matches.
Wow.
And that was because I wrestled every Thursday night in Cambridge and every Sunday in Brantford. But like, like those kind of opportunities aren't around these days. But like, still, like, I just want to wrestle as much as I can. And like, getting 104 matches in my first year, like, that's something that most people can't believe. And it was just, that's all I want to do. Like, still, I just want to wrestle on every show possible.
Do you remember back in those Jay's Place days, one day you're helping with the ring and the crank underneath, it like blew up in your face? I had this in my head that this one of the cranks underneath, and it just blew up when you were cranking it.
Oh, yeah, the come along, yeah.
Yeah, the come along.
Yeah, that rings a bell.
That, oh man, it's like for some reason, every time I'm doing the come along underneath our ring, I think about that. So like it's ingrained in my head. It just blew up. I've never seen like sparks out of a come along before. But so now you're doing amazing. You are the AJ Styles. You are the low key wrestler on everything, and now you're on Impact Wrestling. Do you have more, like, what are your next goals? Because right now you seem like you're doing amazing. You're on everyone's list of people you want to wrestle, people you want to have on a show.
I have a ton of goals, not specific to like who I want to wrestle. I have a ton of stuff I want to do. Like, I want to wrestle in Japan, obviously. Like, that's a huge goal that I think is highly attainable. It's just whenever the time is right. Other than that, like, being on Impact Wrestling, like, whether I ever go to WWE or if I go somewhere else, like, I don't have any goals to be anywhere but where I'm at on a television product. Like, that was never even a goal I thought was attainable. I still have a million goals indie wrestling wise. Like, as an indie wrestler, I think I'm respected by wrestlers and fans in the know. But like, I'm not one of these buzz guys on the indies in America that has to be on every show. Like, that's my goal. I still want to be like a Bryan Danielson of the indies or something, if that makes any sense.
For sure it does. Are you getting more opportunities now that you're back in the States? I know you've been like pretty much all over North America lately, it seems. Yeah, but like, take Defy, for instance. Like, yep. That's on my bucket list of places I want to wrestle, because I've heard amazing things from people like Killer Cross and Brody King. But like, I've just never been there, and that opportunity hasn't come up yet. So like, that's still like hanging on my bucket list. I'm doing bar wrestling that's coming up in a few weeks, and like, that was on my bucket list. So like, I'm just like, there's things I want to check off and keep doing. So. And then locally, you've been doing a ton of stuff with Alpha. You definitely helped PWR 365, whatever you want to say it. Every show, I remember you came to, you're like, I might not be for the kids, but when everyone leaves, they're going to see like that match. Like, has that always been your mentality the last several years? Like,
yeah, I did a like pre-show tryout for WWE as an extra, and I remember I had my match and I did my promo, and William Regal sat down and talked to me. And I think he says this every time to the group of people, but he was just like, he used Bryan Danielson as the example, Daniel Bryan. He was just like, that guy can do anything, but his wrestling is legitimate. Like, some people come out here and they make wrestling look like a joke, but they're so entertaining that it doesn't matter because the kids love them. But the thing that Bryan does is, at the time, he wasn't like the entertaining guy he is now. He didn't have the Yes Movement or any of the promos with Kane. This was when he first started, and they just looked at him as like a blue chip guy. But like he said, he was just like the father or the mother and the father, or the mother that brings the child that's annoyed at the guy that can't wrestle, but their kids love him. They might not come back because they were so annoyed by that guy. But Bryan Danielson, when they watch him wrestle, they go, oh, this guy's different. Like, he'll hook the parents to be like, okay, maybe I'll go back because I can see that guy. It's all those people that want to doubt that wrestling might be legitimate in some way. Like, he puts the question mark in their mind. And I was just like, yeah, that sounds like something like I'd want to do. So that's kind of what I've made my goal at.
That makes sense too, because when I run these shows, my lady sits in the crowd with my boy, And she doesn't like wrestling. She just does it to help me, support me. Usually have a few family members if it's on the island. And then she texts me after every match what she likes and hates. And when there's guys who are like legitimate, like really, really great wrestlers, those are her favorite no matter what. And she doesn't even like wrestling. But she'll be like, hey, are you having that guy back? So I can see why that makes sense.
Yeah, like I've heard it so many times over the years, whether it be like ex-girlfriends or friends or work people that have come to shows that like they always support me because they think whatever I did was real at some point. And I think it's just a psychological thing.
Oh, I get that. Now, for 365 Wrestling, we're really only doing Kitchener and Guelph right now. We're trying to expand a bit more. But you seem to really have a great thing going in Guelph. The fans just love you there. You have those more like competitive matches. You have them everywhere, but in Guelph, they really appreciate them. Why do you like Guelph?
Well, when I started the PWA shows in Guelph before it was 365, I feel like the crowds were a little bit smaller, but they were starting to grow. And it's just like, it's like a home base for like what I've tried to do there. Like a lot of those fans that have brought friends that keep coming back now as the crowd grows were the fans that saw me like try to bust my ass with like Nolan Pink or all these other guys and like give them something different on the show. Because that's just like, that's what I always try to do. But like, I think it's kind of like, it's grown around me always trying to like bust my ass and perform. Like one of my favorite matches from last year was actually against you in Guelph. Nice. Like I never get to wrestle a bigger dude. You know what I mean? And when I do, I get to sell a little bit, and like that crowd doesn't see me sell, and it was completely different than what I've done there. But the crowd was like crazy, and like the match I had with Judas in Guelph last time, like that'll be one of my favorite matches I've ever had because I watched it back, and usually every time I watch a match back, I'm like, I'm gonna hate this for sure. And I watched it back, and I was like, that was like I can't complain about myself very much in that. And like the rope breaking helped the match obviously, but like the crowd was just insane, and that's all you can ask for. And like Guelph, every time the crowd wants to see some badass wrestling, and I just feed off that. I think it just puts me on a different level too.
And I think it raises the whole brand though, because they see how much you compete. And I don't know, at least to myself, I want to work hard every show because I don't want to have a match that's sure you might be the match tonight, but I better be number 2. I still want to be number 1. Like I just feel like everyone should want to compete and really get that crowd going, and they appreciate it there. And I know you've wrestled Judas now, who's one of the kids, Nolan, and Legacy, and you wrestled all 3 of them there, and all 3 of them said the exact same thing, is they just learned so much and a different style when they wrestled you, and now they need more of it.
Yeah, another good, that's all I can ask for, because when I started, like in the times where like you're talking about Brantford and Cambridge and GCW and all this stuff in 2005, like the top guys were the Cody Deaners, the Hayden Averys, the Jake O'Reillys, yada yada, and I never got an opportunity against any of those guys for like 5 years.
Wow.
And if I did, they never wanted to try hard with me. And like I've made fun of them all now for it because like we're all on an even playing field, but like they never wanted to bust their ass at me. Like I'd come in and be like, yeah, you come in, you give me like a hip toss or something, come in, DDT, yada yada. But like now, like that pissed me off so much when I was younger because I'm such a competitive guy that no matter what, when I work with like, I love working with newer guys because like I feel like they're just sponges and they're more apt to want to listen to me and trust me. So like that's like the Nathan Legacy match. Like that was another really good one that like caught me off guard because like he was just a sponge and like he just wanted to do whatever I said, and like when we did it, like things got messed up here and like we covered it up here, the crowd didn't know the difference, and like it just went super well. And like I take a lot of pride in that. So, like I always try to bust my ass, especially with the newer guys, so like they can never complain about me in 10 years when they're on TV or something.
That's awesome. No, that makes a lot of sense because that was how it was, because I was coming up in that same kind of area just a little before, but it was kind of like, okay, what are your 3 moves? And we might do a couple. Ruffy was an exception for me. He, I think he took me under his wing, but like...
It's funny though, because like they say less is more and all this stuff, and like less is more is something I preach all the time now. Like students at my school are trying to do like brain busters or whatever and think they have to do these crazy like nip up spots, and I'm just like, it's all in how you put it together. I can put together a hot comeback where all I'm going to do is bump you with one shoulder tackle, and it'll be way better than that, because I know like the ebbs and flows now, because I've done this trial and error thing and I've failed so many times. So like now you watch me wrestle on a show, like I might not do as many moves as 2 matches before me, but it's not the moves, it's just the competition and the way like you mix it all together. You know what I mean?
Obviously, it's the in-between stuff between the moves that really make the match. Like, that's why I like a Regal, because the stuff between the moves and setting up those moves were always so amazing to me and different from other people.
Yeah, exactly.
Now, I'm going to wrap it up just because I'd like to have you on again, and I don't want to go too long for the first one, but where can people find you online? Where can they watch you on TV? Can you give me all that kind of stuff?
Yeah, I'm at walking_weapon on Instagram and Twitter, and Josh Alexander on Facebook. But you watch me every Tuesday night on Fight in Canada or on Access TV, Impact Wrestling at 8 p.m.
Awesome. And you have a Pro Wrestling T-shirt store?
Yeah, Pro Wrestling T / Josh Alexander. I got some Josh Alexander, Walking Weapon, and Canadian Strong Style stuff up there.
Awesome, man. Thank you so much for doing this. I appreciate it, and I'd love to have you on again in the future.
Yeah, man, anytime.